Welcome to the Hockey Writers Maple Leafs Lounge, a weekly show from our Toronto Maple Leafs writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, prospects, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, our team covers everything that happens with the blue and white. Come on in and pull up a chair. Welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge. I am your host, Alex Hobson, joined by my hockey writers colleague and fellow Leafs contributor, Shane Seney. Our third co-host, Peter Baracchini, usually hosts these episodes, is unavailable to record today, so it's going to be Shane and I tackling the couple of fun weeks that we've had in Leafs land.
Buddy. Yeah, Peter, I don't know if he just threw in the towel already or what, but no, I'm happy to be here, and let's get rolling.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no shortage of things to talk about, but at the same time, the list of topics today, we normally have a couple of different talking points, some positive, some negative, but it really seems like everything that we're going to be talking about today will go back to this road trip in the California swing. Before we get going, quick message from our friends over at Sports Fans Side Hustle. This show is brought to you by them. It's a new digital course that teaches passionate sports fans how to make a lucrative side income off of their love of the game. Get off of the sidelines and into the game with a course that will teach you more than 14 different and easy to start methods that any sports fan could use to make a steady part-time or full-time income. All you need is the internet, a computer, a passion for sports, and a few hours a week. Go to sportsidehustle.com to get the absolutely free, I'll say that again, absolutely free startup guide that will explain 4 keys to unlocking this income opportunity. Again, that is Sports Side Hustle, 2 S's, sportsidehustle.com, and get started today. So, obviously, Shane, we were off last week, so it's been a couple of eventful weeks in Leafs land. They had a very encouraging character win against the Winnipeg Jets last Saturday, and it looked like it was going to be going to be a sign of good things to come. You know, the team looked great, they looked physical, they stood up for each other and themselves, then they were in control of most of the game, and then it seemed like as soon as they landed in Vegas, things just spiraled out of control. So I guess we'll just start off with a general little recap of the road trip. So obviously a 3-1 loss to Vegas on last Monday, 4-3 loss in overtime to San Jose on Thursday, a 4-2 loss to the Kings on Saturday, and then of course a 4-3 loss to the Ducks on Sunday nights. Shane, just to kick things off, I guess let's just get some general thoughts on this trip and what went wrong for them aside from that Winnipeg game.
I mean, when you fly into Vegas, a lot of times things can spiral. So it's kind of funny how that works out. But no, the team had I felt like when they played Winnipeg, they had this newfound identity where it was like they were going to be tough to play against. The bottom 2 lines were going to bang and crash, and the offense looked pretty good. But unfortunately, again, it just got back to not converting on scoring chances. It was same old story. I think they scored one against Vegas, and then the game against San Jose was unfortunately pretty bad. But for me, it's like just the head coach is like Sheldon Keefe just keeps moving around lines and switching guys, and next game it's 2 guys in, 2 guys out, 2 guys up, 2 guys down. Like I just haven't seen like the same lineup for a while now, and I think that's really starting to take effect on line chemistry, on guys that trying to figure out what their roles are on the team. Like to me, it's like you got a good team is, going in, I'm a first line winger, I need to do this, this, and this. I'm a third line winger, I need to bang and crash and kill penalties. And right now, everything is just moving, shaking, and it's not working. So that's a bit worrisome when it comes to coaching. But you know what? I'm just a little bit disappointed. I'm not hitting the panic button like most in Toronto media. I think it's just, it's a 10-game stretch where they really haven't looked great at times, and really bad at others. But it was a tough stretch. When you go into San Jose and Anaheim, you should be getting 4 points nowadays. And to only get 2, I guess, was, a bit of a disappointment. And it's just a really tough stretch, and it seems like the walls are caving in early here. So I'm curious to see how they bounce back this week.
Yeah, it seems like Sheldon Keefe has wasted no time emptying his chamber of bullets to start off the season. I mean, you look at after that Arizona game when he called out their elite players for not being elite, and then he sort of walked back those comments to the media. And I know we didn't talk about that because last time we recorded was before that game, but you see him single out the star players, and then a couple games later, I think it was the San Jose game, he singled out the defense and said they couldn't make a clean first pass or a clean breakout pass. And then obviously you go to the lineup changes, and it's no secret that Matthews and Marner have sort of been off to a tough start this season. And it happened last year as well. And Matthews had more of an excuse last year because he missed all of preseason and training camp recovering from that wrist injury. But it was the same story last year. The top line couldn't get going. And I can obviously understand why, losing all these games in a row, you want to change the lines and try something else that doesn't work. But I feel like he did go a little too hard with trying to throw things into the blender, because the one thing that you got to consider, and I'm obviously not an NHL coach, I know you're not either. So, these comments might sound ironic coming from a couple of guys who are sitting on a Zoom meeting talking about the team, but, you almost feel like when you alter the lines too much like that, you lose the chemistry that you've been developing. And, Matthews and Marner, they're right there. They're on the cusp of they've tried scoring, they've come close to scoring goals. And you can tell that there's going to be a streak at some point, whether it's in November, December. Like this team did it last year too. They went 4-4-1 in October and then 12-2-0 in November. So this team's capable of getting out of these funks. But, when you break up the second line, Tavares, Nylander, Robertson, who looked great in the first couple of games that they had together, you move Nylander to the third line, you put John Tavares with a couple of wingers that he's barely played alongside all year. And the only change to that top line was putting Kerfoot up there. I feel like Keefe is almost, like I said at the start, he used too many of his bullets. And at this point, we're sitting here and, we're watching the team go on this losing streak. And it's like, okay, he's already blamed the forwards. He's blamed the defense. He's tried changing the lines and still nothing gives. So it almost seems like right now we're at a point where the Leafs need to rely on themselves to get themselves out of this funk, because obviously you're not going to be getting a bone shaking trade at this stage of the season. I'd be very surprised if Sheldon Keefe or if Dubas lost their job at this stage of the season as well. It's just, you don't really see too many big franchise altering moves in November or October. So I don't know what to make of this, but when you go into that road trip and you drop games to teams that you far and away should have taken the 2 points from. And we know that the issue with playing down to their opponents has been a big one for the past couple of years. And to cap it all off by blowing a 3-1 lead to the Anaheim Ducks, I don't care what the circumstances were. Like, it was the worst possible way that road trip could have ended. They had the 5-hour flight back to Toronto, and now they've got 2 days off before they face off against the Philadelphia Flyers, who are, normally I think they were supposed to be one of the worst teams in the league this year, but they're off to a great start. So I'm very interested to see how they approach these next couple of days, because it's, as much as I want to say it is just October, it's concerning that we're talking about these same trends again and again.
For sure it is. And the thing we have to remember is they got off to the same start last year, and then they set the franchise record for points, and Matthews went on to score all those goals after a slow start again. So, a lot of pressure's been put on Marner. I think he's got 9 points in 10 games. So a lot of people can remember that. But I just think Keefe goes into Anaheim and he's like, you know what? This team needs William Nylander to play third line center right now. It's like, wait, what? And he's like, okay, you know what we should do? We should play Holl with Jordie. Well, Holl's a defensive defenseman. So now you're going to, what? You're going to protect him by playing him with another defensive defenseman? Some of the moves are just baffling to me. And it's like, he's waking up and just throwing things in a hat and picking things out of a hat. But I don't know. He's, like you said, he's kind of running out of options early. And if I was him, I might have stuck to what was working in training camp and through the preseason and let that roll for the first, 5 to 7 games. But as we've seen so far, he's all over the place right now.
The problem that I do have with And I understand fully what you're saying when you say that it's, you know, it's October. This team got off to a similar start last year. And like we said, they won 12 out of 14 games in November last season as well. But the issue that I have with that comparison is that, you know, this is largely the same group as last year. Aside from a couple of depth pieces that went out and a couple depth pieces that came in, this is still the Toronto Maple Leafs from the past few years that we've known, with Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Riley, Tavares. That the core five, if you want to call them that. And yes, the Leafs had a great month of November and they did set the franchise record for points in a season. But after that, where did that get them? They lost in the first round again. And I know that you can't really compare those two things directly. You can't say, oh, you know, if the Leafs, you know, the Leafs didn't, you know, lose 4 games in October last year, then, you know, maybe they would have won the first round and they would have advanced and we wouldn't be talking about this. But I feel that a lot of the same tendencies that we've been talking about with this team are correlated with their inability to go far in the playoffs. I mean, you know, last season we talked about the Leafs and how they actually played a solid series against Tampa Bay, but it was just a matter of, you know, they played the defending Stanley Cup champions in the playoffs, and it's a good team beating another good team in a 7-game series. Like you can make that argument for just about any other team. But then you can circle back to the fact that had the Leafs not thrown so many points away against Montreal, against Ottawa, against Buffalo, against Arizona, they didn't win a single game against Arizona last year. Maybe they would have been controlling their own destiny and they would have finished where Florida did and faced off against Washington in the first round. And if they still can't beat Washington, then I feel like they would have gone scorched earth already. But I think the fact that they went up against Tampa, a team that they match up all right against, and they went up and they, you know, ultimately lost in 7 games. I think the fact that they played well in that series sort of saved them heading into this year. The whole mantra of the summer was run it back. You know, you know, this team could have advanced had they been playing, you know, maybe if they weren't playing the defending back-to-back cup champions. So I don't know. I look at last season and I think, great, you know, they did turn it around November, so that there's reason for optimism that they'll turn it around in November this year as well, maybe in December. But there were still those holes in this team all throughout their games last season, and they're continuing into this year. And that's where I have an issue. And, you know, you can look around the league and say Colorado's 4-4-1 to start the year. The Tampa Bay Lightning, I'm pretty sure, have a similar record to the Leafs as well. St. Louis, yeah. There are a lot of great teams that have also struggled in the month of October. And then you've got, you know, bad teams, like teams that should be bad, like Buffalo, and they've been winning games in October. So it's not so much the month of October and their current record that's worrying me. It's more just the fact that they still can't abandon these habits that they have. And these, like, you know, you look at the month of October, I would go as far as to say only one of those games was a true good effort from start to finish. And that was the one against Winnipeg. Even the wins that they had, Samsonov bailed them out a couple of times. And ultimately they did what they could to win those games, because they're 4-4-2 right now. But it's just, I don't know. It's sobering to see that we're still having these exact same conversations about this team. And when you look at the other good teams in the league that have started off poorly too, the argument you can make for them is that they've won cups recently. And I'm not saying that gives them a right to coast through the month of October and take games off, but it certainly gives them a little more leeway, I would think, because they have the recent success to back it up. I don't think the Leafs have earned that right to coast through these games that they should be winning.
No, they haven't at all. They don't have the track record to say the least when it comes to the springtime. So for me, it's like if they were scoring 5 goals a game and losing, then I would have a bigger, you know, worry, or I'd be a little bit closer to that panic button. But the offense is just struggling right now. It's been a tough month for whatever reason. Like we said, the lines are all over the place. The power play has been okay, but the top line hasn't been amazing like everybody's expecting. But again, I see them coming out of it. Again, November, we'll see what happens, but the offense is going to come. So if they can work on, you know, finding some more bodies in the back end and still get some solid goaltending from Samsonov, and they're going to need more help than just him. So, yeah, I'm not too worried, just because of the fact that they're not scoring goals, and that's usually their identity, is that high power, fast paced offense. So if they can just get back to that, get a couple quick ones. You know what I always say to the boys? I'm like, the Leafs need a scummy one from Leo Komarov right now, just to get going, right? So like,
all-star Leo Komarov.
Right. They haven't played with a lead very much this year. So if they can just find a way to get a couple early in a game, and I mean, they thought they had, they called a timeout and everything in the Anaheim game and thought they were going to lock things down, but we saw how that works. So I don't know. It's hard to put a finger on exactly what's wrong right now, but there's unfortunately a lot of things.
Yeah. And, there's, when it comes to the offense, I do agree that that's definitely a big part of the reason why they are where they are right now. You look at the side-by-side stats when you compare them to October 2021, and the main difference that you see there is that the Leafs were scoring way more than they are right now. So that you are right in saying that. I don't know. I can see them bouncing back and going on a winning streak in November and calming the masses a little bit and sort of like getting the pressure off their back a little bit. But I would like to see them embrace this identity on a regular basis all season. And I know it seems like a lot to ask, but it's just, when you're a team that you built your team around a 60 goal scorer up the middle, a guy who can put up 100 points over an 82 game season, 2 other 30 goal scorers, and a defenseman who thrives more on the offensive side of the game than the defensive game. It's obvious what your identity is. You're building a team off of skill and offense, and that style can work in the playoffs. You look back to the Pittsburgh Penguins back in 2016 when they played 2016 when they went on that run that year. Their top pairing for most of those playoffs was Ron Hainsey and Ole Mata. And we talk about the Leafs needing a big shutdown defenseman or a big power forward who can throw hits and stuff. I agree that the Leafs need those aspects on their team. I think every team needs an aspect like that, but we've seen in the past that all offense can work in the playoffs. It's just with the Leafs, I find that they play scared sometimes when they're up against teams that trust their hard work over their skill. And it just seems like when they go up against these teams who have built their brand on working hard and getting the job done, it's easy for them to be boxed out and to be limited in what they can do. So I agree that their offense is still to come around. Austin Matthews only scored 1 goal in October last year or something like that, maybe 2. And he still ended up scoring 60 goals for the season. So obviously there's reason to believe that they're going to turn it around and they're going to be in the top of the division towards the end of the year. But it's just, it all comes back to me for the same signs and the same talking points that it seems like we've been having for 3 years now. And, if they can work themselves out of it, that'd be great. But I wonder at this point what it's going to take just for them to realize that, on the nights when your offense isn't there, you still need to give 100%. You can't coast through these games because you don't have the success to back it up.
Right. Yeah. It's tough. It's tough.
Mm-hmm. It is tough. It is. You can tell that we're not having a great time right now.
No.
So moving on, I guess circling into a little more of a specific talking point from that road trip, that Anaheim game. And I will admit that I missed the most important period of that game. I didn't catch the third period because I was out of the house, but Leafs jump ahead to a 2-1 lead after the first period. So I found that I was looking at the shot totals. I didn't catch a lot of the second period as well, but I was looking at the shot totals, and maybe you can, you caught the whole game, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So can you back up that in the second period, Anaheim seemed to control the pace of the play?
It was just like Jekyll and Hyde. The first period they were flying, second period flat. Like it was crazy. It was like back and forth. And then third period, they get a nice shorty, great play by Kerfoot, nice finish by Calle Yarncroke, who's somehow found himself under some criticism lately, which makes no sense, but topic for perhaps another day. But Philip Crawley, he struggled last night, and you feel bad for the kid. It was his second game, but unfortunately his mistakes kind of got amplified a bit, and Matthews took a penalty on a play and everything, and then Kerfoot on the penalty shot there too. Like just little things that they snowball, and unfortunately against a bad team like Anaheim at home, even though the building was probably half full, they can find some momentum with a big play or what have you. But yeah, like you can't call a timeout up to in the third and then lose in overtime. And like,
especially not when you blow a goal right after that timeout too.
I know it looks horrible. The optics last night were absolutely terrible from start to finish, even with a solid first period. So those are the games you have to win. Like Anaheim is a lottery team. they haven't won in ages. Their power play is -2 differential right now. So like it hurts them to have a man advantage and everything. And they still won. They still won. So like they're back to the drawing board today. I'm sure that plane ride home was absolutely pin dropping theirs. So we'll see. I mean, to me, there needs to be like mass changes when it comes to the lineup, and it's not just the tinkering that's been going on here for 10 games.
You know, if I recall correctly, actually, I think the one lineup change that sort of got them out of the funk last year, and they made this move specifically to get Mitch Marner going. They swapped Marner and Nylander. I remember Marner played a couple of games with Tavares, and he started putting up points a little more, and then they eventually went back to Marner Matthews when he had his confidence back. So maybe it'll take that again. I don't know. I would have liked to see the Marner Nylander swap maybe a little earlier on in this road trip, early on in this season, but obviously we're here right now and it hasn't happened yet. So just going back to that Anaheim game, you know, like you said, it was Jekyll and Hyde, jump out to a 2-1 lead after the first. Anaheim hems them in their zone for most of the second period, but Sheldon stood tall, and it was 2-1 going into the third. Calle Jarnkrok scores a nice shorthanded goal to get the third period started. And then it was that turnover from Marner on the first Zegras goal, and then he calls the timeout, and they immediately surrender another goal. They actually got saved by Frank Vetrano's goal getting disallowed in the third period. They may have lost in regulation there, but they got another chance and they still blew it in overtime. So it was just one of those textbook, you know, you can't make this up. Like, this is how the Leafs end their road trip. But the number one thing from that game that I took away, and that the media is talking about, has been talking about all day, was Mitch Marner and the whole, you know, letting his frustration out in the hall, going back to the dressing room. For those who missed the game, to my knowledge, Sheldon Keefe benched Mitch Marner after he gave the puck away, leading to that Zegras goal. And then after the timeout, sent him back out there. So it's like he benched him, but it was only for one shift. So Shane, what do you take away from that whole ordeal? Is it something that, you know, is maybe shining light on a bit of a disconnect between Keefe and Marner? Or is this just a guy letting his frustrations out? And did he approach the benching situation properly?
No, definitely not. You can't bench a guy for 3 shifts and then get scored on and then throw him back out there. Like, that's not how it works. What kind of message is that sending, right? So sure, Marner had a couple of bad turnovers that turned into goals. It sucks. Those things happen though. And he's one of your best players and you should ride with him. But as we've seen early on, he's been calling them out and backpedaling and then calling them out and doing whatever else he wants. It's easy for me to say, but I'm a little concerned there because it seems like that relationship is, I don't know, it's a little bit fragile if you ask me, considering how much Keefe's already trying to get on these guys in the media, backpedaling. Now he's benching. Like, I'm glad Marner showed his frustration. Good. He should be pissed. Like, he cost his team a couple of goals. Like, that's not what you want out of your number one right winger, right? So I don't think Keefe was smart to bench him first and then to just turn around and play him once they got scored on and then play him in overtime again. I don't think he handled it right. I think there's other players that should be benched well before Marner, even though he had a bad game. Like, I'm beating a dead horse here, but Justin Holl played last night. Why? In LA, he was in the box for 2 goals. Then he was on the ice for the other 2 goals. Like, perfecto, right? So, and then I know they have limited options right now, so out he goes. But I mean, send a message, sit him down for a night. Instead, he's sitting Marner down for a few shifts and then just circling back on, yeah, I probably should play him. So to me, it doesn't look right. It doesn't feel right. Like, the sense of their relationship is just, I've never felt this much pressure on the team after 10 games. I get Dubas's contract's up. Keefe's there with the whole ordeal. Matthews' contracts come up a few times. All of that. I get there's a lot of those, influential pressures between everything, but like, I didn't agree with the benching, and I totally didn't think he handled it the right way at all.
I would say that I agreed with the benching, but I would say, sorry, I'll regroup. I would say that I would agree that he should have benched probably somebody like Holl before benching Marner, because like you said, there are more guys on the team that are more deserving, I would say, of being benched than Marner was. Having said that, I can't really say that I disagreed with him benching Marner because that was a terrible game from him last night. And it doesn't happen often, but it would have sent a strong message to the team. But the problem is that message only gets across if he's benched properly, which he didn't do. So he went halfway with it, and Marner was sent right back out there, and they ended up losing the game. So at this point, you're sort of stuck in the middle between, should he have benched Marner? And, absolutely he should have benched Marner, but why did he only do it for like a shift or two? It's just, I don't know. It's just, it really kind of baffles me because as much as I think that Sheldon Keefe is, I would say out of the, and this could sort of segue into a new topic right here. I would say of the big three, and when I say the big three, I mean the players, the coach, and the GM. I would say Sheldon Keefe is probably the least to blame for the way that this team has started. And, that might sound like a bit of a strange take because we just spent the whole, like, a good chunk of the episode talking about how his lineup changes were probably not the right call. We just dissected why he shouldn't have benched Marner like that. I just have a hard time not holding the players more accountable than Sheldon Keefe right now. That's really what it comes down to for me. And Kyle Dubas, if you've read my work at the Hockey Writers or you've watched these videos, you know that I try to defend Kyle Dubas. I think that most of these moves that he's made as tenure as GM logistically and logically should have panned out. But, whether it's bad luck or whether it's, maybe misjudging a player or something like that, or making a knee-jerk reaction, not all of them have worked out.
No.
Having said that, Kyle Dubas is the guy that put this roster together and ran it back with this same group and put this roster out on the ice. And if that roster doesn't deliver, he does have to be held accountable. And whether that's by, like I said, I can't see him being fired at this stage. Like, he's got 1 year left on his deal. There's no way that the Leafs are not going to let him ride out the rest of this year and at least, give him another trade deadline or another playoff run to figure things out. But, I don't know. I guess when we look at those three variables right there, who would you blame the most of those three? And I don't want to sit here and play the blame game over and over because I feel like everybody needs to be better. And it's not really fair to single out one individual person or one coach or one GM. But if you were to break it up into those three groups, the players, the GM, and the coach, who would you say should be taking most of the heat for this month?
As much as I love Sheldon Keefe, I would say it's a little bit on him. Like, I think that the stability is totally gone right now, from top to bottom. The defense, what can they do about Matt Murray's injury? Those things are out of everybody's control, but the player for being maybe more prepared or better trained, who knows? But unfortunately, that happened. But to me, like, you got to be able to, one, get your team prepared to start on time. Shout out Mike Babcock. And then two, like, you have to provide them with their role on the team and what your expectations are of them. And if you're moving them top six, bottom six, power play time, no power play time, benching a guy for a couple shifts, I just see like he's like spinning the wheel and just getting nothing out of it right now. Yes, the players, of course, have to be held accountable as well. You know what? Morgan Riley and TJ Brody haven't been great this year, and they're kind of, going under the radar right now as far as the negative spotlight goes. But I think it's got to be on Keefe right now. No, I don't think he's going to be fired. Those two guys are attached at the hip right now as far as him and Dubas go. And I can see they're going to ride out the whole year together. It would take like a 6 or 7 game losing streak in December or January for that to happen, when things are even more under the microscope. But right now it's 80% on Keefe, 20% or maybe 10% on the players. And I'm going to throw 10% on Dubas as well, because he needs to make a move. There's got to be a move. Something small, doesn't matter. He didn't want to trade a draft pick for Ethan Bear. No idea why. I don't know. He's got to do something. And it doesn't have to be big like we talked about. The bigger deals always usually happen in February and March. But I think it's mostly on Keefe for sure. For sure. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think, you know what? They could have 2 strong games and then the whole script and narrative on the season is gone. And then they're off and running. Matthews gets hot, the whole world is just a better place. And we'll be laughing in a couple of weeks when we look back on some of our topics the last few weeks. But there's a lot of pressure on these guys right now. And I think it starts with holding Keefe accountable, then the players, and then Dubas.
That's fair. And you know what? When you look at when I like that you mentioned that, this team will go on a run and everybody will forget about it, because that is the reality of how being a Toronto sports fan goes. Things are bad, and then once they go on a winning streak, everybody seems to forget about it. I just personally, I am, as much as I'm obviously going to enjoy it if the Leafs go on a big run and if they, dig themselves out of this hole and start doing some of the things that they've been doing wrong and fixing them. As much as I'm going to support all that and, analyze them objectively, I think I'm going to have a hard time forgetting about the way that they played this month until that they can show the fans that they can get that out of their game, or at least minimize it to a great effect. Because, having a game, if you want to be a contender for the Stanley Cup, having a game like that is acceptable maybe once or twice every couple of weeks, not every other game, not every game like they've played this month. So you definitely want to see a bit of a turnaround there. And I'm glad that you mentioned thinking that Dubas should make a trade, because we are going to touch on that after a quick message from our friends over at Sports Fan Side Hustle, which is a new digital course that teaches passionate sports fans how to make a lucrative side income off of their love of the game. Get off the sidelines and into the game with a course that'll teach you more than 14 different and easy to start methods any sports fan can use to make a steady part-time or a full-time income. All you need is the internet, a computer, a passion for sports, and a few hours a week. Go to sportsidehustle.com to get the absolutely free startup guide that will explain 4 keys to unlocking this income opportunity. Again, Sports Side Hustle. That's sportsidehustle.com, and get started today. So we might as well move on to, I guess this would be the most positive topic that we have to talk about today, but it still relates to what we've seen and what we've gotten out of the Leafs this past month. Sheldon Keefe mentioned that the Leafs will be looking at a bit of a boost in their lineup when Timothy Liljegren and Jordie Benn are healthy and good to return to the lineup. Obviously, both of those have been in the AHL on their rehab stints, getting back into game form, and they should be good to go. I think within the next maybe week or two. Shane, obviously, you talked about Justin Holl, and with Timothy Liljegren coming back, I'm sorry, Sheldon Keefe, but I really don't see a single other player on that defensive core that you can take out of the lineup in favor of Timothy Liljegren, and you are not keeping Timothy Liljegren on the bench. So, Shane, how much of a boost do you think Liljegren and Benn, even coming back, will provide for this lineup?
A lot. People forget, Liljegren had 23 points in 61 games last year, plus 14 player, solid. His first full solid year where he knew he was going to play mostly every night and make an impact on the team. So I think, it sucks that sports hernia surgery, I've been there. It's tough to come back from, but it just takes a bit of time, and then you feel like yourself again. So I think he's going to provide a boost. He's not super flashy, but he gets the job done. And the thing that he does is he doesn't make huge mistakes that get glorified into either a huge scoring chance or a goal, which has just been happening so much with Justin Holl. So Liljegren, he can make that first pass. He joins the rush sometimes. Ben's a veteran guy that's been around. He knows what he is. He's going to bang and crash, block shots. He's that defensive defenseman for, the bottom pair where Philip Kroll will go back down. And but to me, Liljegren gives a big boost, and if anything, he gets Justin Holl out of the lineup. So that could be a huge positive for the team, because there's just too many times where it's either a bad pass when it really shouldn't happen, or he just finds a way to kill the momentum in the game. So Leaf fans can expect a boost from Liljegren for sure. He's not going to save the day in his first game. He's not going to, quiet all the noise around the team, but he's a positive and he's going to help them. And I think he could be back as early as this week by the sound of it. So we'll see how that plays out. But he's definitely a big boost for the lineup.
You know what? I think the problem with Justin Holl more than anything this year has been that it seems like Sheldon Keefe is clinging on to that first 2 months of the 2020-21 season, when he was on a pairing with Jake Muzzin, and that pairing was arguably their best pairing all year. And
Long time ago.
It was a long time ago. Exactly. And it's just, we've seen what Justin Holl can do in a positive light when he has a good game. He can be a strong penalty killer. He can be sound defensively, but the way that Keefe has been deploying him and throwing him out there on the ice for 20 minutes a night. And, like you said, he was on the top pairing with TJ Brodie last night. And, to be fair, he has looked all right with Brodie in the past, but it just seems like the Leafs and Keefe specifically think that Justin Holl has this second gear that he's going to take that will fix half the problems on the Leafs defensive core. And it seems like he's trying to squeeze that out of Holl by putting him in these high pressure situations and just playing the hell out of him on the ice, but it just hasn't worked out. And it seems like a lost cause at this point. And I hate to pile on the guy because, like I said, the Leafs have, the Leafs, okay, that's fair. That's fair. But the Leafs, I think, have had so many guys on their team that need to share some of the blame, and Holl's, obviously needs to share a good chunk of it as well. But in reality, the whole team needs to be better. But if you're going to keep putting Justin Holl in these situations, you're going to keep getting screwed over, and you're going to keep feeling the effects of the stupid penalties or the bad giveaways, the timely giveaways. It seems like there's something that's not there anymore. And when Liljegren comes back to the lineup, I mean, you've got Riley and Brodie, you've got Giordano and Sandin. And then you've got Liljegren, and Jake Muzzin's out right now. So I would honestly almost go Mete Liljegren or Benn Liljegren. I don't see and I know that's not going to happen with Holl making $2 million, but I think that Liljegren is a presence that they've missed on the back end. And it's going to, hopefully if they can get him paired with Mark Giordano again, they looked great together last year. There's a lot of questions that are left to be desired. And, Liljegren coming back could answer some of those, but we'll have to see. Like you said, it's important to temper the expectations, at least early on, because he hasn't played in a long time. So it might take him a couple games to get back into form, but I do think it will be a boost when he gets back. Final talking point for this episode. And again, it's not really anything different than what we've talked about so far, but, Shane, put yourself in Brendan Shanahan's shoes right now. You just watched your team with all the pressure that's on them right now, limp through this month of October, limp through the wins that they got, and the losses were just every textbook narrative that the media can run with happened. You've got 2 days, including today, I guess, at the time of this recording, which is Monday evening and Tuesday. And then you've got a game against Philadelphia on Wednesday. Then you got 2 more days off, and then a back-to-back against Boston and Carolina on the weekend. You're Brendan Shanahan. How do you approach this? Is there a trade to be made? Is there a paper transaction, a roster transaction to be made? Or have the Leafs really just used all their bullets that they can use right now, and we just got to hope they can get themselves out of it? What's your take?
Definitely still have some bullets left in the chamber, I would say. I think he's probably putting a little bit of pressure on Dubas to just kind of get that pulse check on what the word is around the league when it comes to availability of players. They're going to wait and see what Liljegren and Benn can bring to the back end. And it looks like the forward group's kind of set the way it is. It's just the line combos are the ones, that's in the blender right now. But to me, I would say he's going to put a ton of pressure this week on Dubas to, if he's not making a move, he's at least close and talking and figuring out what exactly he wants to do these next few weeks and or months. But to me, like, I'm checking in to get a sense of what's out there. What are we going to have to give up? How does that look not only this year, but moving forward too? We know with Dubas, he never makes, besides that Nick Foligno trade that we can all talk about, he usually doesn't make a deal that's just for this season. It's normally for this season and beyond. So even if he's in the final year of his contract, he's still going to operate like that. So I could see them getting a player with term, probably a defenseman. You know what? I think they also need a little bit of help in goal and finding a veteran goalie that can just provide a little bit more stability in the back end, because we know that Murray's going to come back soon, but that doesn't mean he's going to stick around. So I would be putting pressure on my general manager to give me an update on what's happening in the trade front, because they have a bit of money to work with here, especially if Muzzin stays on long term. But the problem is that Murray's going to be coming off soon, and then he's going to be, his 4 point whatever is back on the books. So that's going to handcuff them again. So they're going to need to figure things out before he comes back. And it starts with getting Liljegren and Benn back in the lineup. They'll send Crawl down, but they just gotta they gotta find that chemistry that we've talked about a few times that right now they just don't have, because their head coach just can't seem to get something that he likes.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned the goaltending, because with all due respect to Erik Källgren, I just don't think he's an NHL goalie right now. I mean, he's shown flashes of it. He came in relief of Jack Campbell in the playoffs last year, and he looked really solid. He came in relief of Peter Mrazek in his NHL debut against the Arizona Coyotes, and he shut the door. He's had games where he's looked like he's got the makings to be an NHL goalie, but the stats just are not there right now. And I don't want him being the next guy up based on what we've seen and based on Murray's injury history. I am of the firm belief. I won't say firm belief. I am of the belief that I think that if the Leafs are going to make any move, and we've talked about trading guys like Justin Holl and trading Alex Kerfoot and all that, and it's the Leaf fans always have their guys on the team who they're including in trade proposals to get anybody, and Kerfoot and Holl are obviously the guys right now. I would at the very least Justin Holl. Kerfoot maybe is the forward equivalent, but based on the way that they've played, I always hear that making a paper transaction or a depth move or trading somebody out of the bottom six or whatever won't make a difference. But I actually would disagree with that notion and say, if you trade a guy like Justin Holl, who I think is relatively popular with his teammates anyways, or Kerfoot's pretty popular with his teammates as well. I'm not saying go out of your way to disrupt team chemistry, but I think that even though trading those guys or trading somebody like that, despite the fact that, I think that trading those guys, even though it might not, make a bone shaking revelation for the Leafs, like trading a Mitch Marner right now would, or something like that. I still think that it does enough to send a message that players aren't safe, that if you're not getting the job done, then there will be somebody else willing to take your job. And that's, with Holl, you've got your answer with Liljegren coming back. Alex Kerfoot, I mean, with all due respect to him, I know he's a bit of a Swiss Army knife and stuff, but do you know how many players in the AHL are chomping at the bit waiting for a chance? I'm sure we could get some production out of Alex Steeves. I'm sure we could get something out of Pontus Holmberg. There are guys down there that are waiting for their shot. And it's just, when you run it back with the same group over and over and over, you're going to have these times when, you're questioning if the mix that you have in the dressing room is the mix that works. And it doesn't always have to be trading a star player or firing a coach or firing a GM. Sure, Hall's only making $2 million. He's been used as a top four defenseman. Alex Kerfoot, yeah, he's not one of the star players. Maybe it's not going to, send an earthquake through the dressing room, but I think it would send a message at the bare minimum that efforts like this are not acceptable. And if you're not going to show up and bring it night in and night out, then you don't deserve to have a job on this team. So you
can I would say package Pierre Engvall on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Engvall as well. He's a guy that said that he thinks he can score 20 goals this year, and he just hasn't looked the same since coming back from that ankle injury. No. So it's I feel like we end off almost. Sorry.
Interesting times for sure.
Yes. Yeah. I was just going to say, I feel like we end off every single episode with something to the effect of, we'll see what happens, and we'll talk about it next week.
As Riley said, it is what it is right now.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, so one final word from our friends over at Sports Fan Side Hustle, new digital course that teaches passionate sports fans how to make a lucrative side income off of their love of the game. Get off the sidelines and into the game with a course that will teach you more than 14 different and easy to start methods from any sports fan can use to make a steady part-time or a full-time income. All you need is the internet, a computer, a passion for sports, and a few hours a week. Go to sportsidehustle.com to get the absolutely free startup guide that will explain 4 keys to unlocking this income and opportunity. Again, Sportside Hustle and sportsidehustle.com, and get started today. All right. Well, that concludes another episode of the Maple Leafs Lounge. If you're with us, I know you're in pain as well. Thank you so much for coming and listening to us drown our sorrows and try to analyze what's wrong with this team. Be sure to check out the Hockey Writers channel for all your favorite hockey contents. I'm Alex Hobson for Shane Seney. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Maple Leafs Lounge.